Good morning and welcome back to day 2 of Disruptive Seasons Spring 2022, where I'm not actually in the year 2022, I'm in the year 3022. I'm Kate Bennett of Disruptive Live, and today we have another extraordinary lineup of speakers covering more hot topics in and around the technology industry. Don't forget to like and comment, we love to interact with you. Today we're starting with Sean Remnant, CSO of Ignition Technology. Over to you, Sean.
Hello everyone, my name is Sean Remnant. I'm from a company called Ignition Technology. We're a distributor for cloud, SaaS, security-based solutions and services in the UK and across EMEA. Today, I was just going to share with you a little bit of insight from the intel that we get from the position that we're in the market. We're a trade-only organisation, so we deal with probably your partners, your security partners, and basically we bring in new and emerging technology from the likes of the US or from Israel, and we bring it to the geographies for our partners to bring to you, our customers, basically satisfying security challenges for today's market. So we're security focused, we support EMEA, and we basically specialise in bringing in that new technology into regions. We focus just on software, service and cloud security, and we've probably evaluated over 1,500 technologies in the last 6 years. The team, years of experience, but part of the teams that have brought in the likes of Palo Alto Networks, F5, FireEye into the UK. And numerous awards collected over the last few years. Why do we exist? There's a lot of confusion in the market. The market is absolutely saturated with cybersecurity solutions. We see thousands of new startups popping up every year, all trying to get mind share from our customers and from ourselves, saying they've got the latest and greatest, best technology to address today's security concerns. What we've also seen is a huge shift away from hardware to software and SaaS and cloud-based solutions. A lot of legacy and traditional solutions have been very perimeter-centric, very hardware-centric, and we've seen a huge shift in the last 5 years, especially in the current climate over the last couple of years, where people have been working from home, accessing servers and workloads that are completely geographically dispersed. So we focus on solving business challenges around security, things like securing the Microsoft stack, focusing on identity, which we believe is the cornerstone of all security. Everything boils down to a strong identity platform. Hot topics like ransomware, digital transformation, which we have seen expedited over the last couple of years. And also things that may be deemed as marketing terms like zero trust, and we can help demystify and provide clarity around some of those topics. And then the thing I wanted to just touch on today, and the main point of this presentation today, is what we're hearing from the industry around cyber insurance. So what are some of the things that we're seeing in the market? Well, with the introduction of digital transformation, and certainly over the last few years, we've seen the attack surface absolutely explode. What do we mean by that? Well, with workloads, servers, users, applications, all being moved to the cloud and geographically dispersed, that creates a much bigger target for the would-be attackers. And that actually requires a completely different approach to traditional perimeter technology and perimeter security solutions that we've been used to in the past. What we see now is that identity really is the new perimeter. Who's the person behind the device? What can they access? And when can they access it? And should they have that permission? We're also seeing the volume, velocity, and variety of attacks growing exponentially. We've seen things like the Colonial Pipeline attack, the things like the SolarWinds attack, Kaseya, and all of these attacks are growing in terms of scale and the amount of people that they're actually affecting. What we've also seen is an increase in regulation and compliance. People need to provide a lot more visibility, a lot more reporting on their infrastructure, what people are doing, how they're doing it, and everything is accountable. And the knock-on effect of that is there's been an explosion in the amount of technology that an organisation deploys around security. And this also has its own challenges, because with that increase in the amount of security solutions, you need more resource. And I think we all know that there's not enough resource in any geo at the moment to basically provide assistance, support, configuration, expertise around these technology areas. So it's a real challenge. And enterprises really are struggling to keep up with the rate of change. So one area I wanted to talk to you about today was what we're seeing in the insurance industry. We're lucky enough that where we sit in the market, as I say, we're a trade-only organisation, but we deal with hundreds of security partners in the UK and across EMEA. And what that means is we actually have visibility over buying trends and actually feedback from those security partners to what their customers are actually telling them or asking them for. So what we do know is that most organisations, I think over 65% of organisations, are looking to cyber insurance to basically minimise the financial impact of a breach or a cyber security attack. And that's across all verticals. So much like you or I want to insure our most precious items, our house, our car, our pets, organisations are looking to get cyber insurance on their business. Now that over the last couple of years has been relatively easy to do. And actually it's been easy to do because the insurance companies probably haven't had the knowledge and visibility of the metrics needed to underwrite an organisation's insurance. The knock-on effect of that is that everyone's run out to get cyber insurance, but now pretty much the cyber insurance industry has been caught on the back foot because of the scale and the number of attacks that we talked about previously. What we know is the frequency of attacks has gone up nearly 500% since 2018. So what we're seeing is basically a lot of organisations making a lot of claims on the insurance industry, and the insurance industry is now starting to have to wisen up. What does that mean? Well, initially it means that the cost of your premiums are going to go up. It's like the cost of a car insurance premium is a lot more for an inexperienced driver, because the likelihood of them crashing is a lot more than for an experienced driver. So actually what we're starting to see is a hardening of the market. The insurance organisations are becoming more knowledgeable about the space, and therefore they're adjusting their premiums and their offerings accordingly. We've had partners come to us saying that customers were being underwritten for risk at 80% last year, and now just 10%. Because the risk of breach and an attack is so much higher. What we're also seeing is that insurance premiums are increasing 400 to 800% in some cases. And that's because there are far more claims being made against those organisations. What we're also seeing is those insurance companies going back to the customer and saying, can you co-insure the risk? Because they don't want to take the burden all themselves. So what we're starting to see is that the insurance companies are now basically going to the organisations and saying, do you know what, you've got to make sure that you've got all the technical controls in place so that you're at a low risk so we can insure you. And again, using the analogy of cars, the insurance companies are basically saying you need an MOT, you need to make sure you've got tread on your tyres, you need to make sure your wipers work, your headlights work. You need to make sure you're in good shape before we then take on the risk of insuring you. Now, that's gone a step further, where we're also hearing that the insurance companies are basically saying, unless you've got those basic security hygienes in place, we're not going to insure you. Again, it's a bit like saying, have you got an MOT on your car? If you've got an MOT, it means you've done all pretty much the right things, and we will insure you. liken it to car insurance, we're basically saying, have you got these technical controls in place? If you haven't, we won't even quote you. So the insurance companies are pushing back on organisations saying, you know, make sure that you've got your organisation as secure as possible, and then we'll take that insurance risk with you. So what we're seeing is there's probably kind of 8 areas that those insurance companies are starting to say that you must have something in place. Things like endpoint detection and response. Have you looked after the endpoints in your environment? Have you got antivirus? Have you got anti-malware? Have you got a way of finding out what's happened on that endpoint? Basic things. Have you got multi-factor authentication? Can you prove who's behind a particular device and what are they accessing, and making sure that you authenticate that user, you know who they are before they access something. Privileged access management. If you've got things like admin accounts or service accounts, make sure you're in control of them, because if you get hit by ransomware or malware, the first thing that's going to go after is your privileged users, because they've got the most power in your organization. We saw with a number of the attacks over the last year that the credentials and the privileged credentials were the target for those attacks, because they allow the would-be attacker to basically laterally spread, move around that environment with least resistance. Things like asset management. Do you know as an organization what you own? Again, another scenario that we saw with the SolarWinds attack. It took people far too long to understand where those servers were, what servers they had, where those servers were, and did they have SolarWinds installed? Have they got the ability to track, investigate incidents? So have they got those solutions that provide a SOC, a Security Operations Center, or have they outsourced that function, which many do if they haven't got the resource? But they need that function to say what's happening in that environment. Local admin rights. Can anybody just access things on your local endpoint? Can a would-be hacker or some malware basically just take over that machine and do what they like? Make sure you're in control of the accounts on those endpoints, servers, and the administrative accounts of some of your applications, including SaaS. SaaS is really being overlooked at the moment in terms of, you know, cloud security posture management, but also SaaS security. Who's got access to Salesforce, Office 365, your Microsoft identity stores? Make sure you're in control. Obviously, if you do get hit, make sure you've got some backup procedures in place. Make sure you can roll back to a known good state where possible. And then probably the last thing, which is as important as all the rest, make sure your staff are trained. There's lots of solutions out there that can send out things like phishing campaigns to help educate your end users, which are often the weakest point in any environment. So just to wrap up, the cyber insurance company has helped where they could. They've started to become more educated that actually this is really a high-risk area, and organisations really do need to be doing as much as they can themselves as well, rather than just offloading the risk onto the insurance industry. So if you need more information, please contact us. We're always available, ignitiontechnology.com, and we can help you through that journey and minefield of getting insurance, and actually, what's more important, reducing the risk of your organisation and helping you to stay safe. Thank you.
Do not adjust your telescreens. All sessions are now being recorded. Your continued cooperation is appreciated. Please enjoy this next session. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Mrna, co-founder and CEO of SalesBeat. I have 20 years in the fast-moving consumer goods sector, having consulted for companies like Woolworths Group and also having worked in companies like PepsiCo and Diageo. I've worked across several different functions like finance, innovation and commercialization, all the way through to corporate development. And I've also worked across several markets like Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, as well as the Oceania. When 2020 hit and COVID came in, we knew that consumer preferences, the way people lived, the way people worked, would change the way supermarkets stocked, and also in terms of availability of stock at stores. So we launched SalesBeat. SalesBeat processes micro and macro factors to model consumer buying behavior and tell supermarkets how much to stock at stores so they do not overstock, which eliminates waste sent to landfill, or understock, leading to stockouts. But I'm not here to talk about what we do today. I'm here to speak about data and existing technology and applications in several sectors. Because we did not use new technology to build what we have. We actually used existing technology that several agencies and military organizations use to predict warfare, conflict, famines, and that sort of thing. But these days, the sort of technology that gets funding are those that elevate our comfort, or convenience, or even for entertainment. And these technologies and the data it stores takes up a lot of energy and also resources, which we are now falling short of. Because it takes a lot of space to store the data, and it takes a lot of energy to run the processes for the data. So, what happens with real issues like climate change, poaching and endangerment of wildlife, and also hunger because of climate change and the fact that agriculture is not as productive as it used to be? Can we use existing data and technology to solve these problems? There are also societal problems like equity and equality in society as well as in the workplace. As an example, there's existing technology out there that can solve these issues. Let's take the example of COVID. mRNA vaccines, or mRNA, and liposomes were actually discovered in 1960s. Robert Malone actually pioneered a landmark study in 1987 that used fatty droplets to deliver mRNA vaccines. And there were research papers done on this. He was the first person to do it. And when 2020 came and COVID happened, researchers at Pfizer and Mrna used this exact technology and all the data that had been gathered in previous vaccine development to launch what they did, which is what we use now. Another more relevant or common example to be used is electric cars. Did you know that electric cars existed before combustion engines did? This may come as a surprise to you, but these have actually existed from before those times. But because electric cars were not fast enough or big enough and comfortable enough, it did not get enough funding. The funding instead went to gas-fueled cars, even steam-fueled cars. It's only now that electric cars are getting enough funding for development. Interestingly enough, there is another methodology going on here. There are studies being done on whether hydrogen fuel cells can be used to fuel these cars. And this technology existed from back in the 1800s, when hydrogen fuel cells were used to light up the streets. So how many other problems out there can be solved by using existing technology and all the data that we have at the moment? That's something for other entrepreneurs to think about, and for VCs and other backers to think about in terms of returns, as in, do we want immediate returns in the next 5 years, or are we looking for something that helps sustain us for the long term? Food for thought.
For fans of the Model Z4 service droid, you'll be pleased to know the Z5 is due to release next month. Orders can be placed via your personal telescreens. Dan Industries have introduced some great additions, including optional night vision and voice synthesized impressions. Stocks are limited, so order soon. For now, on with the show.
Hi there. Virtually every global enterprise has ongoing digitalization projects targeting the promise of Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is all about data-driven decision-making and workflow automation to improve efficiency and optimize production and processes. A study by Deloitte and MuleSoft during 2021 showed that the budget of the average IT department grows with 5 to 6% per year. Yet, IT is asked to deliver 30 to 40% more projects each year, resulting in IT failing to deliver more than 60% of all projects. The IT skills gap is increasing the pressure to deliver more with less resources, setting IT up for failure. The only way to address this is to empower team members outside the core IT groups to do more themselves, without the support of IT. The key is to put easy-to-use and low-code software in their hands. My name is Johan Jonsson. I am the CMO and co-founder of Crosser. Crosser is a modern edge analytics and intelligent integrations platform. Our vision at Crosser is to build a connected, sensor-rich world where all data is integrated in real time, to lead to a faster digital transformation, increased business value, a lower carbon footprint, and a more secure world. The Crosser software enables real-time processing of streaming or batch data for industrial IoT, data transformation, analytics, machine learning, data automation, and integration. The solution is built to fight complexity with simplicity using a low-code approach. The Crosser low-code platform is designed for collaboration and use by any team member, whether or not they are a data scientist or software developer, to help speed up the digital transformation process and empower companies without in-house skills to begin their digital journey. Crosser has already gained recognition from several major analysts, including Gartner, Frost & Sullivan, 451 Research, and was named Gartner Cool Vendor in IoT Edge Computing in 2018. Crosser has customers, partners, and projects in most industrial verticals and is active in almost all continents. There is an imminent technical need for a software glue that connects all machines, systems, and services, and binds the data processing and data integration together. But at the same time, it has to be a time and cost-efficient way to do this, while complementing, not replacing, existing system functionality. We're talking about the holy grail for industrial IT architects right now. On top of the technical need, we have the organizational need to bridge the gap between OT and IT and overcome the industrial IT delivery gap. The need for speed and simplicity in all phases of the industrial IoT project is imminent. The Crosser low-code approach to development and design and the hybrid first approach to implementation finally provide the values that the global industries have been searching for so desperately to start delivering on the promise of Industry 4.0. Imagine your core IoT team of today. What would you consider is the average project time for an ordinary analytics or machine learning project? Are you thinking 2 months, 3 months, maybe even longer? What if you could start thinking in days instead? Let's give you some examples from our global experience. We have a Scandinavian machine manufacturer that planned a POC for 3 weeks together with Crosser to connect and analyze real-time data from a PLC and then write back to the machine accordingly. They had assembled a team of 3 internal experts for the task. After the initial introduction from the Crosser pre-sales team, the project manager spent 4 hours designing the data flow, then testing it with real live data before considering the POC successful. 4 hours compared to 3 weeks. Another enterprise customer of ours, active within the food processing industry, spent 7 weeks of innovation, digital onboarding, and digital learning courses for understanding the Crosser platform capabilities, and then deployed 7 machine learning data flows into 7 different production sites. Within the following 12 months, the same company implemented more than 70 new intelligent data flows within their production sites, using only a team of 3 engineers and developers. Like I said, imagine your core IoT team of today. Central low-code development and control with local deployment and execution for data processing. radically simplifies your Industrial 4.0 projects. Are these examples sunshine stories of the Crosser customer base? No, they're not. Looking at the statistics from 2021, we can see that the average customer is implementing between 20 to 35 intelligent data flows the first 12 months. And the several enterprises are implementing more than 60 to 70 flows per 12 months. When looking into these very successful projects, we started to see a best practice pattern within these organizations. I will mention 3 here. Firstly, they use small but very dedicated project teams that consist of resources from both OT, IT, and business, bridging domain knowledge to speed up innovation and implementation. Second, they outline a roadmap of use cases. The most successful company that we meet had created a roadmap of IoT use cases that needed to be solved during the upcoming 12 months, opening for synergies in development, speed in innovation, and full efficiency of the project group. And last but not least, they start small, but they all aim big. Start with small use cases that provide value directly, not necessarily the use cases with the largest benefits. You will come to those later. Remember that Industry 4.0 and Industrial IoT has a learning curve for everyone involved. The need for an independent software to complement brownfield and future machines, systems, and services are imminent. The need for radically simplifying industrial IoT projects is also imminent. And the need for delivering values out of machine data is becoming crucial for most industries. Think of your IoT project team today. What if they could deliver 10 times more projects every year? How would that affect your business? Thanks for taking the time to listen to this short walkthrough of the Crosser platform and offering. Thank you.
Well, that was some great insights. Let's head straight into the next.
Hello everybody, my name is Darryl Sackett. I have the privilege of leading the FinOps business for SoftwareONE globally. I'm also a member of the FinOps Foundation Governing Board. I want to talk to you today around how FinOps, also known as Cloud Financial Management, can actually help and support your cloud transformation and your digital transformation. When we reflect back on what's happened over the last few years, we talk about digital transformation accelerating 7 years in a few months. And what that means is our usage and the impact to businesses as well as individuals like yourself has been fundamental. What we see is day-to-day requirements, whether it's buying groceries or the way that you self-service your health data, access to airports and everything else that we've experienced. All of this is driving significant change in the way that data and compute is used in the world. When you think towards 2025 and we talk about the amount of spend that's going into digital transformation, many organizations are looking at efficiency, simplicity, and ease of use as some of their fundamental building blocks of why and how they invest in the cloud. By 2025, we see that around 95% of all applications and workloads will be cloud native. That's up from 30% last year. So we see a significant swell or groundswell maturity, if you like, going into cloud and into native at this point. But let me bring you back to one fundamental question that I like to ask, which is why? Why do you have a cloud-first strategy? What does cloud-first mean to you? Do you understand what impact that has on your business, on your operations, on your costs, on your risks, and potentially even on your experience and user experience? Of course, when you think about what that means to your business, ultimately we want to go back to how well you know your clouds, your hyperscalers as we call them, your different workloads, and of course your applications. That might be business critical applications, that might be in cloud natively developed applications. Whenever you think about a transformation or moving something into the cloud, there's three dimensions to it. You've got to think about the cost optimization elements of that. What does that mean? Typically, we talk about that as right costing, whether that's with contracts, savings plans, reserved instances, etc. There are constant changes coming from the hyperscalers, and your estate is also constantly moving. So how do we balance that? I think that's the key takeaway on this point, is it's all about balance. If you push too hard on savings, you can unnaturally lock your business into contracts, but of course we want to try and achieve the highest savings possible. Security perhaps goes without saying. It's more important than ever. The use cases, the amount of data, the personal information that resides in these applications and in your cloud need to be secure, need to be well managed. And then the third dimension is infrastructure optimization, often referred to as right sizing. This is about the usage of VMs or compute or even serverless and containers. What does that look like? How do you optimize that? Making sure there's no stranded storage, zombie VMs, making sure that when people are not in the office or not using it, that it's actually shut down. How do you automate more and more of those policies? So when we think about moving on to the FinOps journey and what that means, again, we see three cycles within that. There's the inform, the optimize, and the operate phase. Inform is all about, do you understand what you're using? Do you have visibility of how that's tagged and managed? Driving data-driven decision-making. Optimization, as we mentioned, is all about the right sizing and right costing elements, making sure the cloud is well governed for your organization. Operate, equally as mentioned, is all about automating policies and processes. The important part is that this is an ongoing cycle. It's a circle for a reason. Whether you are sort of, as we call it, pre-crawl or even crawl from a maturity perspective, whether you're at the walk or run phase, this is a constant cycle that is happening in all of those phases. It never ends, it never stops. This landscape is fluid, so we need to make sure that we constantly have our arms around that. And finally, think about this stat. 22% of electricity and power globally by 2030 will be used by the tech sector. Predominantly a lot of that being driven by cloud data centers and some of the usage coming through our digital transformation as a society. So our approach is very much looking at how we balance the various different investments and transformation journeys into the cloud with the environmental carbon CO2 impact that that generates. So wouldn't it be great that we have a well-governed cloud, we save costs as much as possible, but at the same time save the planet where we can? I would say when you think about bringing people together and the cultural change that FinOps drives, this is, I would say, the most critical element. Having shared goals, having a well-communicated and shared vision as well. But think about, how do we unlock the barriers? How do we get finance to understand IT? How do we get IT to speak to procurement? How does everyone take accountability for the cloud and equally communicate and sort of talk through those shared goals and through a shared understanding of nomenclature, sort of a language of the cloud, if you like. So think of it in two dimensions. FinOps should be ingrained from day one. It should be part of the strategy. Which cloud, how, when, and what does that environmental or CO2 impact potentially generate for your organization, for yourselves? So don't think of it only as, hey, when I'm in the cloud, I then need to manage it and sort of put this operating model around it. It should actually be from day one. So it's both what we call before cloud or pre-cloud, if you like, moving workloads, moving applications into the cloud, and of course those three dimensions, as I mentioned, when you are in the cloud. For those of you who would like to know a bit about SoftwareONE and who we are over 9,000 people in 90 different countries around the world. We live and breathe cloud and transformation, so we have a highly passionate team who is working across technology and the people element of FinOps and the cloud dynamic. Overall, technology can enable us in one element, but it's ultimately our people and the people that use it where that wonderful confluence comes together. If you'd like to know anything more, please reach out to me. But I appreciate your time and thank you for your attention. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us here. Data Drive is experiencing an increase in pedestrian traffic, so please reduce Service Joy delivery usage during this period. Our next speaker is now ready to go, so grab a synthahol and enjoy.
Hi, I'm Michael D'Onofrio. I'm the CEO of Orbis Software. We're a leading cloud software company helping companies with their digital transformation journeys. I'm going to speak to you today about three things that we believe categorizes the company of the future. The three things that we believe is companies need to be more digital, they need to be more resilient, and they need to be more sustainable. And I'm going to explain to you how our software platform and how we work with our customers along these three areas. The first one is digital. We've all heard about the words digital transformation. It's a slightly overused term. However, digital transformation can mean many different things to different customers. Some people are optimizing their customer experience, creating a new mobile experience for a retail bank. Others are moving their applications to the cloud. So it may be a large government client. They have a software from 40 years ago, and they're trying to figure out how do I turn that into modern cloud software. And others are buying and selling companies. So different parts of digital transformation. You hear CIOs talking about it. You hear CEOs talking about it. You hear chief digital and chief transformation officers talk about it. Fundamentally, to be able to shape and architect a successful digital transformation, you need to understand where you are today, where you're going, say 2, 3, 5 years in the future, and then you need to map out your journey of how you're going to get there. In terms of mapping out your journey, scenarios, impact analysis, all these different pieces, you need to orchestrate what you're doing as a company. So that's one of the things that our software platform does. We help companies all around the world doing that, large enterprises, government clients, healthcare, technology companies, and big professional services firms, to give you an example. That digital transformation journey, as I've said, means a different thing for every person. But generally, the leaders of that digital transformation, they want to be able to make smarter, better decisions. And they rarely have all the information in one place to be able to do that. So being able to get them halfway there, being able to accelerate that journey is a really important sort of customer proposition that many companies are sort of facing today. So the first is to be more digital, right? Digital companies sit at we sit at the heart of their transformation journey, and being a more digital company gives you more agility and leads to the second one, which is resilience. Resilience is a term that, over the last sort of 5 years has come more and more into kind of business language. We used to talk about resilience in terms of supply chains, and we used to talk about resilience in terms of operations, and we're talking more and more about that. But what's really interesting, if I take one vertical, banking, financial service, and insurance, now the regulators have stepped in. And resilience for them means you need to be able to ensure, which is a really important word, that your operations, your technology, your digital infrastructure is resilient, which is really increasing the threshold for chief resiliency officers, which is a bit of a new C-suite sort of title. And then again, all the CIOs, the CTOs, all the other technology professionals primarily underneath, alongside the COO and the chief financial officer, to be able to address that. Fundamentally, resilience, people say, is that risk? Is that about cyber? What is that piece? It's all of those coming together. But resiliency is fundamentally, you need a holistic view of what's happening across your enterprise, right? You need to understand, here's my customer experience. Here's the business processes underneath. Here's then the technologies and the digital infrastructure that I use to be able to support that. And you need these things to connect together, right? Whether you're a B2C company or a B2B company or a government serving your citizens, you need to be able to connect these in an integrated way to create that seamless, often digital customer experience. Resiliency is also about being able to respond to threats, right? We take cybersecurity, or we take a data center going offline in Microsoft or in Google or in Amazon, which many people are connected to. You need to be able to respond with agility. You need to be able to understand, when you enter your war room as an executive, right? You're not starting with a whiteboard and hearsay. You're spinning up a cloud platform that's giving you, where do I start? Can you get me halfway there? Can you give me context on what's happening, right? I don't need to know 100% what's happening, but I need to understand context, direction, give me the confidence to be able to make one better decision faster. Many companies aspire to be resilient. I think it's always a continuous journey. It's very hard to sort of say our resilience journey is complete. In a similar way with digital transformation journeys, you kind of start the next one once you've completed your current program or portfolio of activities. But being resilient is also about bringing those multiple teams together, right? So in these war rooms, you have security teams, you have risk teams, you have cost, you have the IT, you have architects, you have process professionals coming together and being able to collaborate around a single source of enterprise information. That's another very important thing that a digital platform such as ours and sort of others in our space help provide for companies. The final piece, so we've covered digital, we've covered resilient, the third part is sustainable. And when I say sustainable, what I mean is making decisions that are appropriate for the long term, right? There is an environmental aspect, social governance aspect, but actually it's more fundamental, right? Sustainable companies are resilient and digital, typically, but they're also companies that, they're making decisions that are decades in the future. You have executives that are thinking, as if I own the company, what would I want to do? And being able to make sustainable decisions, which include planet, include people, include profit, include purpose, and it also include the potential for your company to be 2, 3, 4 times bigger through hyperscale growth. We call those the 5 Ps. These are all really important elements that need to come together to build a more sustainable business, to be able to grow in a sustainable way, and to also operate in a responsible way within the world that we live in. So helping our customers make better sustainable decisions. Sometimes it's taking your information, right, that talks about your technology architecture and your digital infrastructure. You have cost information, you have risk information, you have security, you have what's going out of date. Also overlaying a sustainability lens to that as well. An example is using tools from Microsoft as an example. They have sustainability calculators. So if you're looking at moving an application that is currently installed on-premise or installed in a local data center, which is just for your company, moving it into a hyperscale data center, such as the ones run by Azure and Amazon Web Services. If you go into shared infrastructure, which is very efficient and also typically powered by sustainable energy, every time you make that decision as a technology professional to move something into the cloud, you're actually reducing carbon emissions. And I'm not sure in the boardrooms of today or in the executives of today, people really understand that all those little incremental decisions, for example, around moving an application to the cloud, that it can actually, if we add all those up together and we make millions of those decisions every year, we can make sure that our technology operations are more carbon neutral, or means that we can reduce the emissions that ultimately as companies and leaders we need to offset. Right? We made a commitment as a company to be carbon negative, right? It's really important for our staff, actually, because sustainability was very high on our kind of employee value proposition, but it's also a promise to our customers of, let us help you get down that journey, right? Once you've replaced the lights, you've moved to electric cars, you've switched to renewable energy, if I just take the energy example, right? Then actually, what about all of your technology infrastructure? Because if the internet keeps growing at the pace that it does today, technology, the internet, and all kind of digital infrastructure could make up 20% of humanity's carbon emissions. And we can't allow that to happen because we don't have that capacity as a company, as a world, to be able to get there. So digital, resilient, and sustainable. To be able to do that, you need a modern technology platform to sort of support your journey. It's one of the things that we provide here at Orbis Software, headquartered in London, a couple hundred people around the world, operate in 52 countries, and we'd love to have a chat with you. If what I've talked about today is on your executive or your technology leadership team agenda, just reach out to us via our website or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, everyone.
I'm loving today's show. Don't forget to share, like, and type your comments in the post. We would love to hear from you. For now, I'll hand over to another fabulous presentation.
How does R&D funding work in the UK and in other countries? Well, if you think about it, it's not changed much really since the post-war period, since the 1950s, which is where R&D funding really started ramping up from governments, investing post-war in getting industry and innovation going. And the tool they used to do this primarily is through big grant programs and through procurement. And that's a problem. And it's a problem because that type of funding is very much geared towards funding the big incumbents that freezes out the startups and the entrepreneurs, because the government that's awarding that type of funding takes safe bets, and the safe bets lean towards those that have a history and a track record. You're much more likely to give your money to a Rolls-Royce than you are to a startup emerging out of nowhere. And that's a problem, because it's freezing out those incumbents. It's much less ambitious, and it impacts on productivity. And most importantly, we're not developing these great novel solutions or supporting them in the way that we could to some of the big challenges we face. And we face some big challenges, big social, economic and environmental challenges, climate change, chronic health conditions such as the increased rate of dementia and Alzheimer's, lots of problems that we really need brilliant, innovative solutions to. So what's the answer if we can't rely on this old model of grant R&D funding that goes towards the usual suspects and usual players? Well, we might have to look at a model that actually began 300 years ago. So let's go back to the Longitude Prize of 1714. So that was an era that faced lots of similar sort of big challenges of a very different kind from those that we find today, that also needed breakthrough ideas and innovation. And one of these big problems was, how do you measure longitude at sea? You could measure latitude fairly accurately, but not longitude. And this meant that, say, between 1550 and 1650, 1 in 5 ships were lost at sea. I mean, that was a huge problem. And the UK government just couldn't come up with a solution. Other governments couldn't come up with solutions. Sir Isaac Newton had tried to come up with a solution. Many years earlier, Galileo and the likes have tried to come up with solutions. And nobody could come up with an effective way to do this. So the UK government created a challenge prize called the Longitude Prize, where they said, whoever can solve this problem accurately, we will give them £20,000. And we'll give out money to those that make progress along the way. And the solution that emerged was from an unknown man, a guy called John Harrison, who developed the ship's chronometer. He was a carpenter and a watchmaker. He certainly wasn't of the same kind of brilliant scientific background as the likes of Sir Isaac Newton. And he designed this clock that transformed global navigation. And this is a real model that we can use in the future. Challenge prizes have been used since then in all sorts of contexts throughout the Industrial Revolution and throughout the 20th century. Most notably, prizes were used to reward advances in aviation, for example. So transatlantic flight was stimulated using this type of methodology. Who could fly across the Atlantic first was a big Daily Mail prize that created lots of aviators trying to do that, and was finally won on a flight from Canada to Ireland, and then was followed up with by the very famous Orteig Prize that was won by the Spirit of St. Louis from the United States to Paris. But after World War II, this type of methodology fell out of fashion. And why was that? And it's because after World War II, they just used huge amounts of grant funding to really get the economy going. And that's the model we've still got very much today. And as I said, it causes that problem because it doesn't level the playing field for the disruptors, for the new innovators that are going to come up with these brilliant new solutions. But challenge prizes have made something of a comeback. So in the United States in particular, in 1996, a new prize was launched called the Ansari X Prize. And this was a $10 million award to whoever could build a privately funded and crewed spaceship into suborbit and go into suborbit within twice within 2 weeks. And that was won in 2004 by the team that is now Virgin Galactic, and it kicked off the private spaceflight industry. And now we know the results of that. NASA are engaging all sorts of private companies that have sprung up to create the new space missions and get NASA rolling again. And that was very much because they used this Challenge Prize methodology that NASA now also uses in all sorts of contexts where it doesn't know where it might get the best solutions from. And this has been very popular in the US in recent years. And then in the UK, we reintroduced Challenge Prizes 300 years later. The UK government set up a centre of expertise in conjunction with the Innovation Foundation, Nesta, and set up Challenge Works, which is a UK centre of expertise developing Challenge Prizes. It started as a set of experiments, and now we've run almost 80 Challenge Prizes all around the world, have engaged 12,000 innovative teams, and awarded hundreds of millions of pounds of funding for Challenge Prizes for people to solve these big problems. An example of which is the current Longitude Prize, the new one, which is for a new diagnostic that will help reduce misuse of antibiotics. We kick-started the open banking sector with a number of prizes used to stimulate open banking services for small business banking. There was a new prize that we launched, the Toyota Mobility Unlimited Challenge, which came up with the first to-market wheelchair that was lightweight and using AI to improve mobility for people with lower limb paralysis. And many, many more, including a big challenge prize at the moment to reduce plastic waste in Africa, and a big £200 million challenge fund to solve some of the water challenges that the UK is facing coming up. I might just give you one slightly more detailed example, which is the Mobility Unlimited Challenge. So this was a $1 million challenge prize with the Toyota Mobility Foundation, which, as I said, was about coming up with a radical new solution for people with lower limb paralysis. And the winner of this, Andrew Slorence, who is the founder of a company called Phoenix Instinct, created this incredible wheelchair that moves and anticipates movement of the body using a very lightweight alloy and algorithms that predict movement and are able to respond to the user's body. And that's in the marketplace, and that was stimulated very much with this $1 million prize that he was the first to solve and bring to the market. So where next for challenge prizes? Well, we have big, big challenges that require really novel and innovative solutions, whether it be how do we cope with the aging population and the issues of dementia, what solutions do we need in order to tackle climate change and adapt and adjust our societies to global warming, how do we grow food at scale in sub-Saharan Africa where there's increasing drought. So a whole raft of different social, environmental and economic problems that really need novel innovation and disruptors to develop solutions quickly. And that means R&D funding just can't go on in the way that has done, using this model of funding the usual suspects and the incumbents. And that's why now is the moment for challenge prizes that crowd in multiple solutions, that open up to absolutely everybody to come up with the optimal aim and the optimal solutions, and unearth the best and the most optimal solutions to find that way forward and to develop these great solutions to these enormous problems.
Last but no means least of today's fabulous lineup, we have the pleasure of introducing the Celerity panel with Craig Aston, Darren Sanders, and hosted by none other than our own Andrew McLean.
Thank you for joining us on the beautiful skyline here on Disruptive Seasons. Now, we're in the future, and data resilience will be a big topic now and in the future. And of course, data breaches are something that's come up again and again. It's my absolute pleasure to be joined by Darren Sanders and Craig Aston from Celerity. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Andrew. Cheers.
Just for the people that may not know, we're going to be talking today about cybersecurity, data resilience, but what is it that Celerity actually do?
So Celerity we're a managed service provider in really all facets of the data protection suite, going all the way from how to manage your data through to securing and making sure that the data is resilient. It's a big topic for everybody, big topic for us, and something that's growing in the market.
Well, of course, in the past there was a lockdowns, pandemic, and of course now in the future, data breaches are on the news all the time. That's what people talk about. Different people see them in a different way. So, how could a company suffer a data breach?
Yeah, there's so many different ways. It starts with the easiest one, which is human error. If someone sends an email but they CC the wrong person on it, if that's got confidential information as like an email attachment or the content, there's an immediate data breach. You've got the old-fashioned one, which is physical theft. Somebody can walk into an office, steal something off like a printer. The other issue with physical theft is more and more people working from home is the theft of laptops from someone's home, and those laptops containing company information. You've got the malicious insider, so that whole insider threat, which is one of the hardest ones to sort of deal with and manage and detect. Ransomware is probably the fastest growing threat, and phishing. So email is part of everyone's life now, so everyone's receiving emails on daily basis, and chances are everyone's received an email that is a phishing email where it pretends to be from someone who it's not, like your bank or your employer, and gives you a link to sort of click on, and that link will download a malicious bit of code and steal your identity, empty your bank account for you, and all sorts of horrible things.
It's interesting. When you look at the headlines speak about data breaches, and they say, oh, such and such company's been fined for this, and all these kind of regulations that go around it. But what's rarely reported is the downtime, the actual effect it has on a company. How does downtime from these things affect a company?
It costs a lot of money. It really does. Costs a fortune. There's data that says £300,000 an hour.
Wow.
Can be up to millions of pounds an hour. Darren was talking about ransomware. Ransomware is because that really is downtime, because then you're talking about being shut out of your systems completely. And it's downtime. It's because it just stops you operating completely. And this is what a lot of businesses really don't understand, that it is. You have to try and put yourself in the situation of, what would I do if I cannot send an email, I can't receive a phone call, I can't get to any information, I can't get into my bank? What actually would happen, and what's the implications? It's becoming a big part of business continuity planning, and it's harder and harder to be able to see all the things that are going to happen. But it's about when, not if, as well. You've got to be ready. You've got to be completely ready for this to happen, because it's happening to more and more organisations. And actually, it's how you recover. And it comes on to it's interesting what Darren was saying around physical theft. People forget about physical theft of equipment. Used to be years ago, you'd hear about the MOD having one of their people leaving their laptop on a train. That was one. I remember that being one of the stories. But that because a lot more of it is now done through cyber, and actually probably the security of the devices is better, that's less of a problem. But it still is a problem, even if it's paper data as well. It can be any sort of threat like that.
It's I mean, yeah, you're right. It used to be people leaving a laptop, and even before that, the minister leaves a briefcase and it's got papers in it.
Exactly.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's now a lot about the cyber security, and ransomware has just. I mean, it appeared one day, and now it's the dread of everyone, including myself. It is the absolute dread. But could you maybe talk me through, from my amateur point of view, could you maybe talk me through a type of company that is susceptible to a ransomware attack?
Everybody is the honest answer to that. It's very much anybody who has a computer system of any type. And if you think about it, all companies have financial systems. They do. They have to report their financials. So therefore, if somebody can close you out of your financial system, you're in real trouble. The time to get back as well. There's data that says the average time to get back is 23 days. You imagine being locked out of all your financial systems for 23 days. You can't buy anything, you can't invoice anything, you can't pay for anything. Potentially, your people can't travel or communicate with each other. It completely paralyzes most businesses. You talk to, I've got a friend who works in the construction industry, and he was saying that until recently they thought they were immune from it, but actually all their scheduling is done on a system of some sort. What happens if you can't schedule where your people are going to be? It's as wide as that, and for me it's every company is susceptible to this, and I think it's also a hidden threat, because there are any number of particularly small businesses who've been hit and will have paid the ransom and just won't have told anyone. Because there's a reputational risk to this. There's a big reputational risk where you do not want to tell customers, suppliers, employees that you've been hit. So I think it's tip of the iceberg, the ones that actually come out and are publicised.
That's what I was saying, isn't it? There's two types of companies out there, one that's been hit by a cyber attack and the one that's next. Nobody's immune from it.
Yes.
Regardless of the size of the organisation.
Well, I mean, so one of the things I know Celerity talk about a lot is how to protect against. But let's talk more about how do we recover. We'll talk about data resilience. Well, let's ask the same question, but how could a company use data resilience to aid themselves? How would that work?
Yes, the data resilience. It's one of those areas which has just grown. 10 years ago, data resilience was just obviously making your data available, regardless of what the failure was, whether it was a hardware failure, a network failure, corruption, having multiple copies, having redundancy in the hardware. Now data resilience, to me, is more about accessing the data all the time, regardless of what attack you've been faced with, and it's especially prudent around like the cyber attack. If you look at how a cyber attack will typically occur, you've got the initiation of the attack where either an external hacker has planted something in your environment, exploited a hole in your network security, or a user's clicked on a phishing email, anything which gets that ransomware code onto one of your systems. You've then got the phase where the proliferation phase, where that sort of like grows, it laterally traverses your network, infecting more and more systems, and obviously creates a line of communication back to the hacker, who can then send more code. It then activates. Obviously from the first phase, it can sit there for days, weeks, months in a sort of dormant state. Then at some point, the hacker's going to activate it, and then you're going to face like the effects of most ransomware, which is your data is going to become encrypted. Up until that point, you've probably had no idea that was going on. So data resilience doesn't come into play, because unless you've got all your intrusion detection systems, your SIEM up and running to possibly pick up some of these network anomalies which might have been going on, you'll have had no idea that this threat has been traversing your environments. Once the encryption's actually occurred, then the next phase that is you get a ransom. We've encrypted your data, give us X million pounds worth of Bitcoin and we'll send you the decryption key. You've then got the choice of, do you pay the ransom or do you try and recover the data? Paying the ransom, can you guarantee you'll get the decryption key? Possibly not. It's that trust. Do you really want to put your trust in a hacker, someone who's encrypted your information and caused a data breach? And then the last phase, providing you actually can recover the data or you pay the ransom, is you have to clean up. So you've got to recover the data, unencrypted, but then scan it to make sure that the threat which was there has been fully removed, because there's nothing to say that, yeah, you paid the ransom, but it's still hanging about somewhere. So 3 months down the line, you could just reactivate that, and then you're back to square one. So it's this vicious circle, really.
Yeah, I mean, if I understand this, I used to do some MSP things myself. Sometimes it's there for a long time, so it goes through all the backup cycles. So it's already there, hidden in the backups. Is that still the case?
I think I saw something where there's different sort of figures being banded about, but the average time of threats in your environment is about 206 days.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
Not many people have a backup of their data 206 days ago. The average data retention time for a backup is between 30 and 90 days. So
I think this is where it's changing, though, isn't it? What you're saying is entirely right, and it's changing from 2 years ago, it was about prevention of the attack. It was about prevention of actually having that malware on there and being able to actually assess it's there or stop it. It's now moved to the fact there's actually an acceptance that there probably is stuff there. So you are then trying to put mitigations in place so that you have a set of data that you know is clean and that you can go back to. Because it's that, and this comes back to what Darren says about, do you want to pay the ransom? Do you trust the people you're paying the ransom to? If the answer to that is no, then you need to have absolute certainty about being able to get back to a set of data that you know is clean. Yeah. And then, I mean, this is right up IBM street. It really is. It's exactly what IBM's been doing and working on for years, just because of the nature of their customer base. But it comes down to getting that clean set of data, and I think that's around Cyber Vault and immutable copies, isn't it, Darren?
Yeah. So if we rewind sort of to the state where, how can the customer use data resilience to protect from the cyber attack? We've talked a lot about in the past in other videos and blogs about the value of immutable backups. And obviously people talk about your backup is your last line of defense, which is completely true. Having that immutable copy means that you've got a copy of that data, it can't be tampered with. Because one of the key things which these ransomware does is they will attack the backup data. They'll immediately go across now, and they're engineered to look for backup applications and encrypt your backup data or the backup application to stop you being able to recover the data. If you've got that immutable copy, then you've beat them at their own game. You've got a copy you can recover the data from. It's tamper-proof. Even from the insider threat, your storage administrators, your backup administrators can't delete that immutable backup until its defined retention policy expires. So you've got that almost like cyber insurance, really.
It absolutely is like an insurance policy. Absolutely
recover that data. The negative slant on having the immutable backup is that we've talked about the cost of the downtime that an attack might cause, the 23 days average recovery time. Recovering your entire organization from your backup, it's a timely process. It's not done in minutes. You're recovering all of that data. If your immutable copy is in the public cloud, you've got to bring all that data back on site to recover it. You potentially have egress costs that suck that data out of the cloud, but it's the time to actually recover it. So I don't want to downplay the importance of the immutable copy. That's still crucial, but people have to be aware that there's an operational cost to actually recover it, which is the time it takes to recover the physical data. IBM has sort of looked at that and introduced, about 5 years ago, I think, they started using safeguarded copy, which was a mechanism to take immutable snapshots of your production volumes on your production storage. And this came into play on the DS8000 storage models, so predominantly used by mainframe customers to protect the mainframe data. Now the safeguarded copy capability has filtered down and is available within the Spectrum virtualized layer, so the software it runs on IBM's flash systems and SAN volume controller. So customers can now take immutable copies of their production data on their production storage. So obviously what that means from a timeline point of view is you can recover your data from a snapshot in seconds, minutes, as opposed to hours, days, weeks from the backup application. So they need to work hand in hand. What it does is it just gives you more ammunition and a much more flexible recovery plan, a cyber recovery plan, should you get attacked. And what IBM did was they evolved the whole concept of the safeguarded copy into the Cyber Vault. So you've got lots of different software which integrates with the storage API, Copy Services Manager, so you can automate and schedule the immutable safeguarded copy backups of your production data. If it's a key system, you might want to take a snapshot every 4 hours. Non-critical system, you might want to do maybe once a day, and you can automate that to run it periodically throughout the business day. But then taking it a step further, they've integrated it with QRadar, which is a great way of thinking. So if you've got QRadar as part of your team, monitoring for security sort of events,
anomalies,
which
isn't
are
it? It's like anomalies,
out of the norm,
that's right.
It detects something. So somebody's tried to access this data from an IP address which I don't know. We've never seen it before. This looks really suspect. QRadar will actually pick that up, flag it, and automatically tell the storage system to take an immutable snapshot of that data now. So if that is a cyber attack, not only have you got your automated copy protection, but your front-end security systems are taking an ad hoc immediate backup of that data. And that capability just changes the game. You know,
Well, it makes it proactive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes it proactive, a proactive response to something happening, which
Proactive
then
backup
means
recovery.
which means you can then know that you can get back to where you need to go to.
Yeah.
It's all about speed. This is all about speed and speed to recover. It really is, because it's the whole downtime argument.
Well, that's what I want to pick up.
Costs millions.
On the higher level, on a non-technical level. I mean, what are the real-world benefits? You just said downtime of strong data resilience.
It's keeping the business going.
Survival.
At its absolute critical level, it's business survival. There's some data from the US talking around SMEs, where if an SME gets hit by ransomware, over 50% of them are out of business in a year. Yeah. And you sit and you think about that when you put that around the world. So it is business survival, but it's reputational risk.
Yeah.
It's reputational risk. In a lot of cases, it will mean your website goes down. All of those very visible things to your customers, your partners, it becomes quite obvious you've got a problem, and that's the reputational part where then organisations won't want to deal with you. I mean, you take it. What Darren says is right. It's come down from the high-end systems that the banks use, because they need to be more resilient than anybody these days. They really do. And if you see a banking system go down for even 20 minutes because of the prevalence of social media, it goes everywhere so quickly. When you look at things like TSB, when their app wouldn't work for a few days, it is so intrinsic to everybody's lives now that you can't have downtime. You just can't do it. It's too much of a business risk.
And that reputation thing, which you mentioned, obviously the organisation's reputation and their brand takes a huge hit on that. Customers lose trust. But going back to the fact that no company is immune to a cyber attack. Yes, you have been hit, but you don't hide the fact. But if you've got the security mechanisms in place to say, yes, we did get a cyber attack, but we've managed to recover all of our data, no data loss, the data's clean, because we had all these like IBM Q Radar, safeguarded copy, immutable backups. We had all of these mechanisms in place. You publicise that, and it reinstills the trust that your customers have. Yes, you've been attacked, but it's only a matter of time before you get attacked anyway. But you've got the recovery plan in place and proved that it works.
No interruption of service.
Yeah,
is the key thing, and also you've got the regulatory side as well. GDPR fines, particularly for the bigger organisations, are huge. They really are. But even that's going to start to come down to the smaller organisations. If you can show the ICO that actually, yes, you've been breached, but your protection systems and all your preparations meant that it doesn't mean that the data has actually been lost. It doesn't mean that it's been released into the public domain. Yeah. That is the side on the GDPR side, isn't it? It's around avoiding those fines. And once again, you don't want to be on the mail on Sunday for your data breach that's happened. And it is, and it's personal stuff as well. Darren was talking about phishing earlier on, and you think about in your personal life how many of these texts and emails you get where you just don't click on them anymore. But it's as easy to get caught as a business as it is as an individual, and all manner of individuals get caught with this all the time. But as a business, it's up to the business directors and business management to protect against the threat, and that's what this does.
I mean, it's frightening times, some of it. And yeah, you do see the headlines, and it's like, ooh. Okay, so that's a lot of knowledge that you've imparted, but let's just wrap this up with any advice. So what advice would you give to viewers interested in really bolstering data resilience?
I would say modern data protection. Everyone needs to be looking at modernising the backups. There's far too many companies out there who have what I would say is a legacy backup infrastructure. It hasn't had investment. They've said, yeah, it works, it backs the data up, it's fine, it hasn't been touched in 5 years, but there'll be holes in it. You know, if you look at that, a lesson from history, I suppose, if you look at Troy withstood external attacks for centuries, for years and years, but the Trojan horse, that insider threat, is what brought it down. Immutability is what stops that insider threat from happening. So if you can employ immutable backups, immutable snapshots of your production data, you know, you're beating the hackers at their own game. Then, you know, if you already got something which can't be encrypted, then their code can't do anything about it.
I think my advice would be think about it, bring it up to the agenda, particularly at board level conversations. It needs to be a board level conversation.
Yeah.
How are you ready to react to a cyber attack or a data leak?
Yeah.
And there has to be, and it can't be hidden. There's still too many organisations who are putting their head in the sand. You're absolutely right. It's a traditional area where organisations do not invest.
Yeah.
But this is the area now where if you don't invest, it's the equivalent of having a building and not having a fire suppression system in the building. If your building's on fire, you want your sprinkler system because that will protect you. It's the same as that. It's that absolute essential to be able to stop the fire.
Yeah, it's like everyone has a disaster recovery plan because your
Because they're told to.
disaster recovery, that strategy's been around for ages, but not everyone has that cyber recovery plan.
Correct.
And they need to have that in place, and it needs to be flexible and use every bit of technology that's available. And because cyber threats are growing very rapidly, your cyber recovery strategy has to be continually evolving all the time to cater for these new threats. What I would also say is, what was I going to say? I was going to completely lost my train of thought.
For me, it's business continuity planning.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me. Your cyber recovery plan is part of your business continuity plan. It's not only IT is one thing. It's all the processes that go around it. If the pandemic has taught us one thing, it's expect the unexpected. We were looking back at our business continuity plan from 3 years ago, a couple of weeks ago, and there was a global pandemic was one of the risks that was in there.
Wow.
Low risk, high impact was how we described it at the time. That was November 2019.
Yeah.
How wrong we were with the low risk, but how right we were with the high impact. So it's the thing of thinking the worst, making sure it's process as well as technology, but also once you've done it, and I think it comes back to what you were saying, it can't then just go in a cupboard. You've got to consistently, particularly on the cyber side, consistently update it because the cyber threat is evolving quicker than or as quickly as the protection can. Which is also why we work with IBM around it, because IBM are constantly researching what's coming next and trying to stay one step ahead of hackers, encryption, and all those sorts of things. You look at the work they're doing around quantum computing now. That's the next stage of this, where this will go. But it's staying ahead and working with your tier one technology providers to actually really understand what's coming down the line. It's too important not to.
Yeah, I got my train of thought back. To basically have that defined cyber recovery plan, you actually need the insight about what a cyber attack does, how the ransomware works, how it traverses the networks within your organization. So understanding all the different data breaches and the type of attacks you can have, that is what you use to build your cyber recovery plan. You need to know how the attack works before you can fix it. Yeah. And I think the last bit of advice really is to give is speak to us.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
This is what we do day in, day out. You know, we can offer all the advice that you need.
And that's all the way through from the process side of things, building the continuity plan, all the way through the technical side of stuff. We are here to help organisations in this, and actually the whole ecosystem, the IT ecosystem, are screaming about this and trying to make people listen, because it's a problem for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. Well, as they said, we create a lot of content around cybersecurity, and guess who we usually ask for advice? Exactly. So a fantastic company. They've lots of blogs and videos online. Please check them out. But for this talk today, thank you so much, Darren Saunders and Craig Aston. You guys have been stars. Thank you for watching Disruptive Seasons. You were joined today by Celerity, and don't go away.
Craig, Darren, Andrew, thank you, and what a way to end the show. Thank you to all our speakers of the last 2 days, and to you watching and commenting. I look forward to seeing you very soon for another instalment of Disruptive Seasons. But for now, goodbye from the future.